All right, so I'm going to start the presentation. So again, if everybody could please mute themselves, that would be most appreciated. The presentation is about 43 minutes long, and then we'll get into questions and comments after that. Thanks very much, everyone.
Good evening. Welcome to the second virtual Public Information Center for the replacement of the Teeswater River Bridge on Bruce Road 3 in Paisley. The purpose of the meeting is to share the different design and detour concepts that are under consideration, to allow you to ask questions and to provide comments on the project. Your input will assist the county to make a decision towards the final design for the new bridge. BM Ross and Associated Limited is the lead on behalf of the County of Bruce for the Municipal Class Environmental Assessment and for the design of the bridge and the detour. The panel who will present the information and who will answer your questions consists of Andrew Ross, Project Engineer for BM Ross, Kelly Vader, Senior Planner for BM Ross, Jim Donahoe, Engineering Manager for Bruce County, and myself, Miguel Paisley, Director of Transportation and Environmental Services for Bruce County. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation and to provide your comments.
During tonight's presentation, we're going to talk about the project background, just to give everybody a brief update on what's happened since the last public meeting in September of last year. Then I'm going to go into a bit of detail about the Municipal Class Environmental Assessment process and explain where we are at in that process. We're going to provide some detail on the hydrological assessment that's been completed for the bridge and looking at the existing bridge, the proposed bridge, and the detour bridge. And we're going to identify a preliminary preferred detour route for the project. Then we're going to talk a bit about the different detailed design options being considered for the new bridge and discuss proposed timelines to finalize the Class EA.
The Teeswater River Bridge is located on Bruce County Road 3 in central Paisley, spanning the Teeswater River immediately upstream of its confluence with the Saugeen River. The bridge was constructed about 1935. It's a concrete T-beam bridge with 3 spans, 2 smaller end spans at 11.8 meters each, and a longer middle span of 31.6 meters. Sidewalks are currently located on either side of the road, and they're 5 feet in width. There are bridges of a similar style at Dunblane and also one in Walkerton. Major repairs have been completed on this bridge in 1968 and then again in 2009. Maintenance repairs are needed almost every year for the expansion joints and the sidewalks. Bridges of this period were expected to last about 50 years. With improvements in bridge design and bridge building materials, the current bridge code requires a design life of 75 years. This bridge has provided 85 years of service now, but due to the age, general deterioration of numerous concrete components, and more ongoing maintenance to keep the bridge in good structural condition, it's considered time to plan for a replacement. The bridge has some special features. At the south end, the abutment is tied into the buildings located adjacent to the bridge, and this will need to be carefully considered during the removal and the construction of the new crossing. The bridge is also integral to the flood control dike system at the north end. Solid panels at the north end of the railings are part of the dike system. These photos illustrate some of the concerns with the current structure. The photo on the left shows deterioration of the concrete on the underside of the sidewalk. It's still safe to use for now, but we need to keep an eye on it with annual inspections, and eventually the sidewalk would need to be closed when the deterioration gets too bad. At right, the photo shows the bridge during a recent flooding event. You can see how high the water level is on the bridge. Because it's at the junction of the 2 rivers, the water level here is completely dependent on the Saugeen River, and has very little to do with the flow of the Teeswater River under the bridge. We will work closely with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority when we determine what span and elevation will be used in the new design.
The municipal class environmental assessment process is a planning process used by municipalities when undertaking projects such as road and bridge construction, and as well as sewage and water projects. The process involves a series of steps that are followed in order to evaluate and plan the project appropriately. An evaluation of the environment is conducted to identify specific factors related to the project. This involves a consideration of all components of the environment, including the natural, social, cultural, economic, and built environments. Input from residents, stakeholders, and agencies are used to assist with identifying the potential impacts, as well as the completion of specialized studies. Potential impacts associated with a project are then identified, as well as appropriate mitigation measures to address those impacts. This slide illustrates the steps or phases in the Class EA process. The first is the identification of the problem. Why are you doing the project? What is the problem you're trying to resolve? Then you evaluate the alternatives. Once you identify a problem, a series of alternatives are identified to address that problem. These alternatives are then systematically evaluated to determine what impacts might result from their implementation. For a more complex project, such as the replacement of the Teeswater River Bridge, detailed design concepts are reviewed of the proposed bridge design. This could include the style of the bridge, the number and width of traffic lanes and sidewalks, the appearance of railings and barriers, as well as other design features. Once the process is complete, an environmental study report is prepared which documents the Class EA process completed and is placed on the public record for a 30-day review period. This slide illustrates the different phases in the class environmental assessment process and shows where we are currently in the EA being completed for this project. So we are currently in phase 3, which is a review of the detailed design alternatives, as well as additional collection of information related to the environment around the bridge. Following the completion of this phase, we'll be going into phase 4, which will be the completion of the environmental study report and issuance of a notice of completion. The detailed design alternatives that are being recommended in this presentation will also need to be confirmed at County Council before we finalize the EA and move forward with implementation. This slide reviews some of the timelines associated with the Class EA. The project was initiated in October of 2019 with a notice of study completion being published in the Owen Sound Sun-Times and the Paisley Advocate. Letters were also sent to various review agencies, adjacent property owners in the community of Paisley, and Aboriginal communities. Following the initial consultation, in May of 2020, there was a website launched with signs posted at the bridge. This allowed us to capture input from people that don't necessarily live in Paisley, but who use the bridge on a daily basis. That summer, there were 2 specialized studies completed by consultants. We had a heritage evaluation of the bridge completed by a local consulting firm, and we also had a species at risk assessment completed to determine if there was any special habitat located adjacent to the bridge that would need to be addressed during construction. That September, we had the first public meeting, which was a virtual public meeting, similar to the format for this meeting. That winter, which is just the past winter, we had the preliminary bridge design work completed and a hydrology assessment was completed for the project. And now we're in May of 2021 with the second public meeting being held on May 18th. We have received significant input from residents in regards to this project. Based on this feedback, there is no doubt that this project is very important to the community and something that the entire village is concerned with. I have summarized some of the general comments received during the consultation phase of the project to date. Many of these comments were repeated over and over again by residents. In regards to the design of the new bridge, the community does not want to see a standard concrete bridge with high barrier walls that block the view of the river. They want a bridge that is reflective of the artistic village of Paisley. Wider sidewalks, a possible viewing platform, more open railings, and design components that make the new bridge look unique, unlike other bridges. In regards to the detour options, during construction of the new bridge, most residents were concerned with impacts to downtown businesses that would result from an out-of-town detour. Businesses are already struggling due to COVID-19 and rely heavily on the summer tourist traffic to be profitable. Additional concerns were expressed about impacts to school-aged children and families if separated by a long detour, as well as safety concerns if fire and EMS response times were negatively impacted by the detour. The local road detour option also could potentially impact the Mennonite community, as several local schools are located along the routes and many children bike or walk to school on a regular basis. As I noted previously, as part of the class environmental assessment, we seek input from various review agencies on the environmental assessment process that's being completed. For this one, we received input from the Municipal Environment, Conservation, and Parks. And what they confirmed was that various consultation efforts needed to be completed as part of the environmental assessment, including consultation with First Nations communities and Métis communities and various review agencies. We also were advised that the class environmental assessment report completed at the conclusion would need to consider climate change and source water protection as part of our review of impacts. We also got input from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. They advised us that they have regulations in the area that will be impacted by the project and that a permit will be required for the new bridge, as well as any temporary bridges or other works that occur adjacent to the river. They also advised us that there's concerns related to flooding and that they own the flood control dike that is located along the banks of the river, and they will have significant input on any changes to those features that would result from the new bridge construction. The Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries also advised that they have concerns related to archaeological features, built and cultural heritage, and that we will have to submit information to them as part of the project. We also received input from the Mennonite community as part of the EA. They indicated that they had a preference for the in-town detour route and also expressed concerns related to one of the local detour routes in Erin Elderslie because of the location of a local school on that route, and the extra traffic related to that detour could affect the safety of their community. The Grey Bruce Health Unit indicated that they had concerns with injury prevention and interactions potentially between vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians presented by the different detour routes. They also indicated a potential concern to the Mennonite community related to the detours, and were concerned with the social impacts within the community related to the longer detour routes. The Bruce County Planning Department indicated that the design of the new bridge should reflect the unique heritage and community of Paisley.
I'll talk now a little bit about the hydrology investigation that we've done for the site. The hydrology is the study of flow through the bridges and in the area of the bridges. So last time, back in September, we talked a bit about the history of flooding in the area, and we've reviewed the historic flooding events, the 1977 flood, and the flooding control study in 1979. That eventually led to the construction of the dikes. We'll take a look at a video that was shot in February of 2018. This is the same flood event that damaged the bridge in Chesley. So take a moment just to look at the flow pattern, the amount of ice that's coming through here. We didn't actually get a view. Conservation Authority staff took this video of the ice flow. It didn't actually specifically look at the Teeswater River Bridge, but we certainly considered this event when we were looking at what a temporary bridge might look like in the area of the fire hall and the arena. So previous flood control studies have been done, and we built upon that. We have to make sure that the new bridge, just like the existing bridge, ties into the dike system you can see how the existing bridge railings have been modified, where they made a shorter top panel so that they could fill in solid concrete walls to prevent a flood event from actually flowing over the sidewalk and down Queen Street towards the north. The hydrology investigation that we did was built upon a model already existing from the 1979 study. It was last updated by Saugeen Conservation in 1990. Then we did a bunch of additional field survey, topographic survey above the water and below the water to add to the existing model and show the existing site conditions with that extra information. We used software called HEC-RAS, and we modeled the situation existing and with the proposed bridge designs, including the temporary detour bridge. So this map shows some of the areas that we modeled. The little red lines that you see are cross sections that we entered into the model, and we especially looked around the location of the existing bridge, and we did a cross section where the temporary bridge is going to be located. And then the model was run using different scenarios with proposed bridges in those locations. An interesting thing at this site is that the south span of the existing bridge is shadowed by the mill building upstream of it. So that whole span seemed to only carry the flow that was coming through the mill race. And we have to respect the mill race. The future owners and the current owner may want to use that at some time. So we wondered if a two-span bridge would actually meet the hydraulic requirements. On the right-hand side, you can see another event where the ice is very high on the bridge. It's submerged the bottom of the beams of the existing bridge. That's a concern. And we wondered how we could improve with the new bridge to maybe get a bit more freeboard above the water. So when we ran the models, putting in the proposed permanent bridge into the model, we found that the water levels weren't increased by a reduced span in the bridge. That's because the highest flood levels are actually created by the water in the Saugeen River and not the Teeswater. So it doesn't matter how large a bridge we put in here, it won't affect the water level. In fact, the proposed structure will improve the flood flow because we were able to use a thinner deck. In other words, the bottom of the beams of the new bridge are going to be higher than the bottom of the beams of the old bridge. The historic mill race is going to be maintained, and we could handle that flow with a culvert in behind the abutment of a new bridge. Rock protection, erosion protection, has to be provided to prevent scour due to higher flow velocities, which actually happen at lower flow levels. And the bridge railings are going to have to be solid panels in some areas, or up to a certain level, in order to give us that flood protection so that the bridge isn't a weak point in the dike system. The detour bridge was also modeled. We had to figure out what is a safe span and a safe elevation for the bridge. In this case, we're only designing to the 1 in 50 year flow. Because the detour bridge is only going to be in place for 1 year or close to 1 year, the probability of it getting the 1 in 100 year flow is not practical. So we design it for a lower standard just because of the probability. So the low steel elevation has been designed to clear the 1 in 50 year flow. We won't have to reduce or puncture the dike elevation. The road level of the temporary road will be about the same level as the dike. There will be some temporary fill put into the floodplain at the south end, just to support the abutments of the temporary bridge, but that will be removed in the end, and the amount of flood storage that will take out is negligible. Again, we're going to need some rock protection to make sure that the abutments of the bridge are not scoured out.
So the next few slides will review the Class EA detour alternatives that were considered. These were reviewed briefly in the last public meeting, but we've done additional investigations since then that go into a bit more detail. So there were 3 detour alternatives that were identified as part of this project. Detour 1, alternative 1, was a detour using strictly county roads, which were all paved, but that route was quite long. Alternative 2A and B were detours using local roads. We had an east and a west option. The east option was in Erin Elderslie, was a little bit shorter, and the west option was in both Brockton and Kincardine, heading to the west out of town. Alternative 3 was the in-town detour using a temporary bridge, which would be constructed just for this project and then dismantled following completion of the new bridge. It would be a new steel panel bridge that would be constructed adjacent to the fire hall, which is just downstream of the existing bridge, and would exit past the arena and would have 2 lanes for traffic and a pedestrian walkway along one side. This map illustrates the detour option 1, which is strictly on county roads. It's the longest detour and heads east out of Paisley along Bruce Road 11, then north on Bruce Road 10, and back west on Bruce Road 40, before returning to Paisley on Bruce Road 3. Initially, we had identified this route as a truck bypass, and it probably would be used primarily by trucks, just because due to the length, it would be unlikely that a lot of local residents would use this route. And it would result in impacts to local businesses by having local traffic being detoured away from the community.
This shows options 2A and 2B we had discussed back in September. 2A, the red route to the west, was discarded fairly early on. It's longer, it's more complex, and the level of roads existing are just too poor. They would have to be built up too much. So we still did focus on that yellow route to the east, and we'll discuss that a little bit. In order to make this a viable route, we would have to improve the road condition to make it safe enough and practical for trucks. Something that had been raised at our last meeting, a lot of people raised the concern about Side Road 5 because it went past a school. So we considered that we would have to pave the road because of the volume of traffic that was going to be going up County Road 3. And we put in an extra paved lane that would be dedicated for bicycles and horse-drawn vehicles. So that adds a fair bit of cost. And many of the other roads, even the ones that are paved, the pavement wasn't sufficient for the truck traffic volume that was going to be happening. So they would have to be improved with new pavement. We also looked at the intersections. Because a large number of trucks would be having to turn here, we looked at the truck turning radii, and in some cases we were going to have to widen the road at these intersections. All of these costs added up, and we got close to a budget of $2 million for improving this detour. So the third option, which we discussed last time, was an in-town detour with a temporary bridge across the Saugeen River. And that bridge was going to be a modular bridge built on site, sort of Meccano style or Bailey Bridge style. This cross-section shows that it can handle 2 lanes of traffic plus a pedestrian sidewalk on probably the west side. Now this cross-section is slightly narrower than the one that we showed you back in September. It turns out the one we showed previously that was wider was more for a highway that would have 80 kilometer an hour speed limits on it. This model is at 7.3 meters roadway. It has been used successfully in some other urban settings. Now, there will be some truck noise, some exhaust fumes at the intersections with Church Street and Goldie Street. Pedestrians may feel some uncomfortable vibrations when they're on the sidewalk and a truck passes over this bridge. But again, this is considered tolerable for the 1-year construction period. This design and this concept still needs to be confirmed by County Council that this is an acceptable option for them. The total cost of the in-town detour is closer to $2.5 million.
So the next few slides talk about the detailed design alternatives associated with the design of the new bridge. So we're going to provide for you several railing options that are being considered, and these are railing options that provide a sympathetic image of the previous bridge and also address some of the concerns that residents presented about having better viewing opportunities from the new bridge to view the surrounding area. We're also going to look at some sidewalk options. A standard sidewalk width for a new bridge is typically about 1.5 meters or 5 feet in width. But we're proposing to put in wider sidewalks on each side at a width of 1.8 meters, 6 feet, and also have wider viewing areas on the center of each bridge so that residents as well as tourists can view the river both up and downstream of the bridge. We're also going to go through some different design details associated with the new bridge, including a 2-span option as well as a 3-span option.
So first, let's take a look at the existing railings. This is a steel panel railing design, and it was popular from the 1930s to the 1960s. It provided for fairly good visibility when you were looking at right angles to the railing. The pickets, though, when you're looking at an acute angle, they don't allow very much visibility at that sharp an angle. Here you can see how the panels have been modified for the flood control, where there are now concrete parapets in the lower section. So there are a number of issues with this type of railing. It is definitely too weak structurally for the modern bridge code. We have to design for impact loads from vehicles that might accidentally jump the curb and hit the railing. We need to make sure that the vehicles are contained within the bridge. It also allows for salty water or slush in the wintertime to dribble over the edges and cause some damage underneath. And that's shown on the underside here. A lot of people won't see this, but there's a lot of corrosion happening with the reinforcing steel on the underside of the sidewalk. It's safe for now, but it has a limited life. And that salty water will continue down and get at the tender underbelly of the bridge, the structural girders or beams, and it's attacking the reinforcing steel in those structures as well. So for our new bridge, we don't want that to happen. So last year, the Starks Bridge got a brand new railing. This is called the standard parapet wall. It's 825 millimeters high and it has a handrail on it. From the inside, this is what it looks like. And this is typically used on highway bridges, but the same standard, this would meet the requirements for strength and for opening size, all the dimension criteria to meet bridge code requirements. But we certainly got the message that a typical railing is not going to do for the Paisley downtown. So we won't be using this as an option. In Chesley, they did use the standard parapet wall. We were under the gun for design time because of the emergency replacement of this bridge. In this case, we actually put in just these fairly simple dentals in the formwork to give it an appearance that was sympathetic to the railing that was there before, but it's still the standard parapet wall. And it's got some embellishments at the light posts. You can see a build out that breaks up the plain view of the wall a little bit. You know, we don't want to start a railing war between Chesley and Paisley, but this option would work in Paisley as well. There are other fancier things. This was a bridge down in Lambton County that the previous bridge had an arch like this, so it was important that they have an arch back in the railing. This is not a structural arch anymore, it's just an embellishment on the railings. Otherwise, they have an even taller parapet wall with imprints to be sympathetic to the previous railing. In St. Mary's, we designed a custom railing. In this case, it was to look like a historic bridge that had been there one generation before, based on old photographs that we had seen. And we were able to provide a concept sketch like this, and then it was constructed with custom-built formwork, which added to the cost, but this was the preferred alternative for St. Mary's. This isn't on a bridge at all, but it also shows the possibilities with imprints in the railings. This is a parapet wall on the pier at Godrich Harbor that we designed, and we just put in an undulating wave pattern in the formwork, and it gets a lot of public visibility in the summertime with tourists walking out on the pier. BM Ross can't take any credit for this bridge. We saw this example in Stratford, Ontario, and we were interested in it, and this is giving some inspiration to the design that we came up with for the preferred alternative that's preliminary and being presented. So this has a standard parapet wall, and viewed from the inside, you can see the stone embossment that was put into the formwork. Now this is higher than it needs to be, and we're proposing a concrete wall that's lower than this one by a few inches, and metal railing, decorative metal railing on top of that to allow viewing over top of the parapet wall. Another option that people are interested in, they wonder, is it possible to have a barrier between the traffic and the sidewalk? And yes, it is. This is one example in Exeter. Here you can see the standard parapet wall with some stone imprints in the formwork, which is attractive. And then there's an open railing between the sidewalk and the edge of the bridge. There are some problems with this, though. If you take a look, there's still no barrier to prevent the salty slush, the salt water, from dribbling over the edge of the bridge and attacking the underside, because you will be putting salt on the sidewalk. Also, look at the end of the concrete parapet wall. It's closer to traffic now, and there is a danger, or perceived danger at least, of vehicles could possibly hit head on to the end of that concrete wall, and that would be a danger. So we're required to put energy absorption material. In this case, there's guide rail there, and it's hard to imagine how you would have guide rail to protect the end of the parapet wall and how that would tie into the rest of the sidewalk in downtown Paisley. Another disadvantage of this system is an optical illusion. With that solid wall right up against the travel lane, drivers of vehicles would swear that we've narrowed the road. There's an instinct to stay away from that wall and be closer to the center of the road, and that gives the impression that the road is narrower than what it really is. Taking a look at the existing bridge deck, 8.53 meters from curb to curb, we're proposing almost the same width. It's only going to be about 3 inches wider from curb to curb. The difference is in the sidewalk. Where it was a 5-foot wide sidewalk, we're proposing a 6-foot wide sidewalk. A lot of municipalities prefer the wider sidewalk for their snow clearing equipment. It's also making it easier for mobility scooters, things like that. Taking a look at the structure underneath the deck, you'll see that it's a thinner deck section, or thinner beams. These would be pre-stressed concrete girders, box girders, and they're a lot shallower than the existing T-beam stems that are there now. That should give us more clearance for the water level, but it's still not going to get us totally above those flood levels. At some times, you will still see the bottom of the girders submerged underwater. We took a look at a few options. The top option is just straight rectangular. This is very much the way that the existing bridge looks if you were to look straight down on it. The only difference is that the sidewalks are about 1 foot wider. And then in the lower view, we thought, what if we have some expanded viewing areas, some viewing platforms? Because in the comments that we received from the public previously, they indicated how important it was for the view from this bridge. We looked at two different options for the bridge arrangement, a 2-span option and a 3-span option. The existing bridge, remember, is 3 spans. The 2-span option, again, we were going on the assumption that we didn't need the southern span for hydrology. Remember, it's in the flow shadow of the mill building and doesn't really contribute to the amount of flow that goes through this bridge except for the mill race. So in this option, we're showing a rectangular box culvert that lines up with the arches from the mill race, and that would handle all of the flow from the mill race. You can see in the view the old location of the pier, and it's in the deepest part of the channel, which is not really the best for flow or for canoe traffic. So we've split the river into 2 equal spans with a pier further located to the south. We've improved some of the hydrology by moving the north abutment a few meters further north and putting a sloped embankment in front of it. In this view, we even show a 1.5 meter, 5-foot wide flat part up against the abutment that could be used as a walkway if fishermen or canoeists are walking underneath the bridge. The 3-span option, if the hydrology didn't work out for us, we were going to go back to the 3-span option, assuming that that southern span would allow for enough water flow under that span to get back to the flow conditions we needed for the bridge. The pier that is there now is 5 columns and 4 openings, and it looks quite unique. It's an attractive pier, and unlike most places, the pier in Paisley would be seen by a lot of people, either anglers or canoeists going down either of the rivers. So we were trying to put something that was sympathetic to that. Now, this is a little bit false. We're just showing imprints for those 4 openings. They really aren't openings right through the pier as they are now. And in this elevation view, we've shown a proposed railing that is a short parapet wall that's really only 2 foot 5 inches tall, and then an ornamental steel railing on top of that. There are a few solid concrete end posts to give some relief to the plain nature of it. We also considered plain imprint panels rather than the embossed stonework. The embossed stonework is attractive, but you have to remember right beside this bridge is real stonework in the foundation of the old town hall and of the mill. And it might seem a little fake to have embossed stone print right beside actual stonework. So we stayed away from that. Also, the plain panels, if we're the artistic village of Paisley and you want to do some murals as you have in the past, it would be a more even palette for any artists that are going to do work on those railing panels. So this is how the proposed bridge would look in its environment with the buildings around it. Now, this is very much the same location as the existing bridge is, but it's shifted a little bit further to the north. Again, there isn't a span in the line of the mill building, and the pier has been shifted to the south. So the design recommendations are that the proposed bridge deck have 2 lanes very similar to the existing, with 2 viewing platforms on either side on the wider sidewalk. We're recommending the 2-span bridge because after doing the hydrology investigation, the 2-span bridge did give us the required flow underneath, and that includes a culvert at the south end to accommodate the mill race. The sidewalks are going to be increased to 1.8 meters, basically 1 foot wider than existing, and then the viewing platforms would be another 4 feet wide in addition to that. The railing would be solid concrete railing, but only to a height of about 700 millimeters, which is 2 foot 5 inches, and a metal railing above that would be easier to see through. This would be similar to that example we showed from Stratford. So let's take a look at some renderings that we did with some photographs of the existing bridge, and we'll overlay the preferred alternative that we're proposing at this time. This is the view looking north. And this shows that widened viewing platform. This is the view that anglers or fishermen would see from down at the river's edge. Notice that we don't have openings right through the pier. We've just imprinted some fake openings, I suppose, to give it some shadow relief and a little bit more interest. It's not expensive.
So the next few slides just review the schedule going forward as we work to finalize the environmental assessment process. So this summer and fall, after the public meeting, we'll be finalizing the hydrologic investigation based on additional consultations with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. We have been working with them on the hydrology up to this point, but we will at some point need them to formally approve the work that we're doing and the design of the new bridge and the temporary bridge, if that is approved. Then we'll be working to finalize the design of the new bridge. Once we have confirmation of all the different components that go to County Council, then we will work on finalizing those and getting them ready to tender. And then the environmental study report will be finalized and be published for a 30-day review period for the public to review it. So in the fall, once we have that EA report ready, we'll finalize the EA by publishing a notice of study completion and publishing the report for formal review. Then we'll move forward with finalizing the engineering design and applying for approvals. And subject to completing everything above based on those timelines, construction would tentatively be scheduled to begin in the spring of 2022. So next steps, following the public meeting, we'll be collecting and reviewing the additional input we get from the public. Then the project details will be going to County Council to get their input and approval before we move forward with finalization of the design. We would finalize the discussions with the Conservation Authority related to the hydrology and the temporary bridge, finalize the design of the new bridge and the temporary bridge, and finalize the Class Environmental Study Report, or ESR. And then at the conclusion, the notice of study completion would be published and also sent out to everybody for review. So if you have any questions or comments related to this presentation, you can send them to Kelly Vader at kvader@bmross.net, or you can submit them through the project website at the dedicated website located at www.paisleybridgestudy.ca. If you're interested in participating in the virtual public meeting, which is scheduled for May 18th, you can contact Lisa Courtney at lcourtney@bmross.net to register for the meeting. And during the meeting, there'll be Andrew Ross and myself, as well as representatives from the County of Bruce and from Erin Elderslie, available to answer questions. Thank you very much.
All right, so that is our presentation. So we'll now open it up to questions and comments. I've got a few people who told me they had some questions when they emailed to register for the meeting. So I'm just going to call on them first if they are in the meeting. Is Jordan in the meeting? I'm going to guess Jordan didn't show up. Melissa is our next person on the list with questions.
Hi, I'm here.
Hello, Melissa. Please go ahead with your question.
Do you know what? I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to ad lib here. But my question was around, I'm wondering if speeding was being taken into consideration as one of the design features. We have significant issues with speeding. There's a regional speeding committee. There's Bruce County's looking at that, and it's a long-term issue in Paisley. And I just thought, bigger picture here, if we could do something to our bridge to make it, you know, a good thing to slow down for, that might also help. So I'm just wondering if that was considered or could be.
Hi, I might give a start to that answer. Jim Donahoe might also have some input as far as the road design goes. It was our intention to have the road profile, that is the vertical alignment of the road as you drive over it, basically the same as it is now. So there are a little bit of bumps at the ends. Of course, we'd try to smooth that out. That wouldn't help as far as speeding goes. So with the same width between the curbs, the same alignment, I don't know that the bridge would be the solution there, unless we make it so attractive that people slow down just to look at the bridge. That's being wishful, but no, I can't say that it will do anything to make the speeding worse, but at this point, there's nothing in there to make it better.
Yeah, hi, Andy's correct. The bridge wouldn't be the mechanism we would use to address speeding concerns. We do have a strategy for tackling issues like that, and we can look into where the speeding concerns are. We do have equipment to measure speed, and we have a process we go through. We do have a long list that we still need to tackle, but given that you've made the comment, it will be in the minutes of the meeting, and I can put it on our list to be looked at probably in 2022 now. But yeah, your comments are noted. Yeah.
Right. Is there anyone else who has some questions for the study team? Karen, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to ask it? Okay, I'm going to ask Karen's question for her. Karen asks, will the height of the road approaching the bridge be higher?
Yeah, I can answer that. No, in fact, we're trying to make the road exactly where it is as far as the driving surface goes. We would like to raise the road to get above the water level. We're already violating terms of the bridge code by having the bottom of the bridge submerged under some flow conditions. We're supposed to be above the flow level. But with the location of the buildings nearby, we can't physically raise the road there without making it very difficult, maybe even dangerous, for the entrances to the first stores to the north, certainly, and also with the intersection to the south. So we're aiming to keep the road profile exactly where it is.
Steve had a question next.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Just curious if you could elaborate on the construction in 2022. Best case scenario, would it take most of 2022 to construct the Bailey Bridge and then demolition late 2022 on the existing bridge, or how do you foresee best case scenario it playing out?
Currently, our plan is sort of May, June, we would be starting the demolition. So we would want to have the May, June would be starting to install the temporary bridge, if that's the way we go. It looks like we will go that direction, but it's not finalised yet. But so the temporary bridge would need to be in before July in order that we can commence in water work. That's the restriction that's put on us for the demolition of the bridge. That would then go on for the remainder of 2022 until we can start some construction work later in the year. The work would go on through some of the winter and then continue into 2023. So my understanding, and maybe you can support me on this one, Andy, my understanding is we envisage completion of the project, perhaps around the end of August 2023, August, September, something like that.
Yes, I think that's realistic. September or October. We're still going to be in discussion with a construction company to make sure that the timeline we're picturing is realistic.
Thank you for that. It's muchly appreciated, and the presentation tonight was really, really well done. Thank you.
All right, Melissa had a question next.
Oh, hi there again. I was just wondering, I didn't see lights in any of the diagrams. Would there be street lights on the lamp or on the bridge? Where would they be?
Yes, and that's a detail that can be worked out with the municipality. In some of those renderings, we did show a street light, but we showed it on the east side, where right now most of the street lights are on the west side. That doesn't matter. We can work that out. And we also showed a different style than what you have in downtown Paisley. So we would look to the municipality to specify what street light they want, what lamp post they want, things like that. But typically we can put the street lights at the pier or at the abutments or anywhere there. So that's totally open, and likely we would look to the municipality to make those recommendations.
Dave has a question next.
Yeah, it's Dave Teeple here. I'm the fire chief in Paisley. Just wondering what the access looks like on the south end of the temp bridge that's coming across by the fire hall, and what kind of turning radius is there for trucks, like fire trucks, for instance, coming out of the hall, or any other large trucks turning onto or off of that bridge on the south end.
That's a good point. We haven't gotten into the details. We did enough detailing to make sure that it could be done. So we've got some of our technologists here know the truck turning radii. Now it's a very different situation for you because the building is so close to that detour road. You'll have to figure out how quickly you can do a U-turn, I suppose, if you have to go north. You'll have to work that out. One of the concerns, you'll notice there's a large hydro pole right there at that intersection. And in the budget, we're putting in an allowance for Hydro One to relocate some of those hydro poles, whether it's temporary or permanent. We may do that just to make sure the turning radius is adequate at that intersection.
Okay, thank you.
I see you, Mark, but I've got a couple people in the queue ahead of you, so I'll just call on them first, if that's okay. Karen is next on my list.
Sorry, this is back at the previous question about the raising the road. And all of the stores to the north have a step up. I have one of those stores, and it would actually help if the road were one step higher. For every one of the buildings on the north block has a step in. None of them are currently wheelchair accessible, except for the liquor store has a ramp.
Yeah, maybe Scott McLeod, would you be interested in answering that one?
Yeah, I can try and answer that for Karen. Karen, the municipality is presently in discussions with the county and the engineers looking at doing some reconstruction north of the bridge in that block. We think it might be ample time to do that when the bridge construction is taking place. And the engineers actually have pointed out the steps into your buildings of concern. And we're looking at, they're looking at whether they can do a different profile on the sidewalk to adjust to that. But it is actually being looked at. Thank you.
That'd be great. So would that be like a coincidental kind of big dig project?
I don't know if it'd be coincidental, and I don't even know whether I want to call it a big dig project because it's only probably one block of the downtown. But we just think the timing would be the best for, especially for your businesses downtown, when that section is being disturbed. Thanks.
That's great if it could be done at the same time.
Tammy is the next person on the list with a question or a comment.
Hi there. My question is kind of this dream place of, is there a possibility that either some of the temporary bridge or some of the infrastructure around that structure can be left in place to further benefit the investment of the 2.5, even in so far as another viewing point, another river access point, or some of the structure that could be left and we can maximize our river experience as opposed to investing, putting it in, and then just taking it all out again? Has there been some thought around how that structure could also benefit in the future?
Okay, I guess I'll take a stab at that one because we had that question last time. So we keep in mind that when we were building this bridge and building the abutments for it, they're only built for a short period of time. So if we wanted something to last longer, we would actually have to change the design and probably increase the cost even further. There will be sidewalks and viewing points on the bridge if the current solution is it turns out accepted. So right now I don't see the great value for the county to making the additional investment for a viewing point, especially if it's not connecting to a trail or anything. So I would say that right now it'll be difficult to justify to the county council to spend the extra money to have a more permanent structure. But it is a big investment, but we're only doing the minimum that we need for a 2-season type of crossing. After that, everything comes out. If we were to make it last longer, we'd have to design something more resilient and maybe even a higher level. So I don't know, Andy, if you get some technical input on that.
Technically, yeah, the span of the temporary bridge is being minimized and still allowing all the flows and the ice flows that you saw in that video to get downriver. Even as it is, we'll be backing up the water a few inches. The Conservation Authority's nervous about that already. If we were to leave those abutments in place, I think they would have a greater concern, because when we receive the 1 in 100 year flood, it'll be constricting the river flow even more. So to make it a longer span bridge gets very expensive. Also included in the cost, it's a rental bridge. The temporary bridge is like a mechano set that's bolted together and launched. And there's a fair bit of value in all that metal, the materials, and that goes back to the bridge supplier for basically the refund. Otherwise, you have to buy it instead of rent it. It'll look also, that bridge will look rather industrial. It won't look very pretty, but again, it's tolerable for a year.
I guess there's some longer term planning around what's going to happen with the current fire department building there. So I'm wondering, is there some planning at some point that looks at short term and long term with what's going to happen with that actual site?
Sorry, I'll take a stab at that one too. Yeah, so right now this is more of a planning issue. We haven't considered this as part of this this project. Right now we haven't looked at the long-term plans for the fire hall or anything like that. So that if we could, if there's be value, that's not included as part of the project. I mean, we're making sure that we're following the zoning rules and all that, but yeah, we haven't looked at that. Yeah, because the other issue that we have with this area as well is that with the EPCOR project, we just had a lot of conversation with them where they're going to cross the river. So that was a bit of an issue as well, that they didn't want to put their, they don't really want to put the gas line under a bridge. Yeah. So yeah, so no, so to answer your question, we didn't look at the long-term time of the plan for the fire hall because we didn't think it would impact the bridge itself. We just looked at it from the view of having a 2-year detour. Yeah.
Mark, you're up next.
Well, more of a comment than anything. Really pleased with what I've heard here tonight. Congratulations to all those involved. I think the real relief factor, I think everybody would say, is that when you've looked at the math and the logistics, the temporary bridge appears to be quite a possibility. Whether it be for protective services to our businesses, to just the people being able to get where they have to go to, you know, it was going to be very dangerous out on the side roads, especially with the Mennonite school there. So I think you're really doing a great job. I'm wondering, should Erin Elderslie Council at a certain point write a letter to the county officially, you know, stating our support for the temporary bridge as the alternate, you know, route?
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's certainly it doesn't hurt. That's why we're doing these meetings, to get input. So if you feel that your voice would be heard better by doing that, certainly that would be acceptable from the county staff's perspective. We do have one of the county councilors on the call as well. So
yeah.
I don't know if Mayor Hamill wants to add into that. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a fantastic idea. And even if if it is the preferred option from our Paisley Chamber of Commerce, I know there's members of our chamber on, the more letters, the better, I believe. And I'll be advocating to the rest of the county councilors to watch this tonight when they do have time. And hopefully this preferred option gets a good look at and hopefully goes ahead, because I'm excited about it too, but we'll see how the cards lie.
Okay, next up is Jennifer Christie.
Thanks, Lisa. Also, thank you for the presentation. I didn't really have expectations around the design, and I think the preferred option looks really nice, and I think it really will enhance the downtown. So that's great to see. And noted Mayor Hamill around the letter of support from the chamber. I think we can for sure make that happen to support that option as well. I'm just curious, I guess, for planning purposes as a business, what the expectation is around traffic flow over the temporary bridge and through Paisley during the construction. So I'm assuming that there's been some projections around, and just your, experience in these types of projects. What can we expect? Will it be a 50% reduction in traffic through the village during the construction, or 80%? What should we expect for that? Assuming people avoid, there's always people who avoid construction.
I think at the last meeting, when we looked at option 1, which was the longer option using only county roads, there was some discussion about signing that for a truck bypass route. Now, realizing that after taking the longer route one time, some of those trucks may go for the shorter route, but we still could sign that in hopes of diverting some of the truck traffic. But as far as expectations of how much of the normal traffic would be diverted, it's hard to say. We haven't studied that.
Yeah, so once the bridge is closed, we have a system called Municipal 511 where the county and many municipalities when we close bridges, we do put that on there on the site. And then in some cases, I think some of the GPS system pick up on that, and they might, when people use their GPS, they might be redirected somewhere, or they might be advised that there's construction. So that might have an impact, but yeah, I don't think we have the means to come up with a projection other than if it's mostly tourists, then it'll probably go with their GPS. So, which will probably lead them to the bridge. Yeah. So they will probably down there. I would say that's many people would probably still get directed towards the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
That's everybody on my list so far. Is there anyone out in the ether that has a question?
Yeah, it's Dave Teeple here again. What does the exit or entrance look like on the north side? So if we're going from, sort of an equal elevation from the fire hall across to the dike, what's the exit look like then down onto the traveled portion of the road, if you will, because it's fairly steep.
Yes, that's right. So it has to go from the elevation of the dike down to the elevation on Church Street. That's right. And that is a bit of a challenge, but we are trying to maintain. I think our steepest gradient there is 5%, 1 in 20, and that even meets criteria for accessibility. One of the issues that may come up is as the road curves around, lining up with Church Street, we may have to block off Ross Street temporarily for the term of the temporary detour, because the gradient of the road coming off of the bridge might be too high. So Ross Street might be dead-ended there. We'll see if that's required or not. But we still have to maintain access to the church and the 2 residences further to the east.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? I'm not seeing anything further in the chat, so I'll give anyone a last chance to ask the questions. Oh, Mark, please go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Mark.
Some people prefer that. At what stage will we meet again? Andrew, or Kelly, are you the right one to answer that? Like, we're well into this, what's next as far as public input? Or is this about it?
Okay. I can respond to that. So we will be collecting input from the public for the next couple weeks. We'll be putting a report together that Miguel will take to County Council, which will be a summary of any input that we get from residents. I'm anticipating that there may be people who weren't able to attend tonight's meeting and will still want to submit comments either by email or in a letter. We also had reached out to a number of the review agencies and to the Mennonite community. We sent some hard copies of the presentation to them since they weren't able to view it virtually. And so we're hoping to get some input from those communities as well. So I would just ask everybody who's here tonight if they could, if they know of someone who is interested in the project but who wasn't able to attend the meeting, to please send in their feedback, because we are going to be compiling a report to provide to County Council. As far as any formal consultation, the next formal stage will be the publication of the notice of study completion and the final report that will be published. So when that document is made public, there's a 30-day review period where anyone can review that report and provide any feedback to us, any concerns they might have with any impacts that we haven't properly addressed.
Thanks, Kelly.
No problem.
Any further questions or comments?
I have a quick comment. It's Sandra Crocker. I was really impressed with the bridge design. I have to say, coming into this meeting, and out of the last, like in knowing there's quite utilitarian options out there, I thought that what you were I find that what you're proposing has taken all of our comments into consideration and is quite elegant. And so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you for that comment. That helps.
And I'll put out the call again. Any questions or comments? All right. Well, I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat or comments. So again, if anybody has any comments or questions after the meeting, please feel free to contact Kelly. You can send them to myself, but I'll be sending them to Kelly. So it's probably best just to send them to Kelly. And we will be putting a recording of this meeting up on the project website. So if you have a neighbor or a friend who wasn't able to attend, you can direct them to the website and they can view the entire meeting and all the questions and comments. So I think unless the study team has anything to add, I think we'll call it a night.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Night, thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Enjoy the nice evening.
Great meeting. Thank you.
Dave, the website is paisleybridgestudy.ca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You guys.
Have a good night.